Hello, welcome to the next episode of Sofa Time with Mirus. I'm Dan Sharp, Sales Director at Mirus.
I'm Paul Tomlinson, Managing Director at Mirus.
So what we're going to talk about today is the future of telephony. I guess a really good place to start is the ending of ISDN.
Yeah, so what we're seeing at the moment is ISDN, which is how people have predominantly used their phone systems for a number of years. BT and all the other networks in the UK are basically saying we're not going to provide ISDN anymore. So 2025 is the date that we've been told that ISDN will stop working. It may drag on because people haven't migrated, but that's the date everyone's working towards at the moment. And obviously what that means is we're starting to see people look at what do they do beyond 2025, because they still need phones.
So ISDN is what? The lines, the physical boxes in the office? Or?
Yeah, so your ISDN line is essentially the physical box that brings the telephone line in. If you're making outbound calls, it needs to be routed through there. If you're receiving inbound calls, it comes in through that. There are other ways of doing it, so SIP trunks, internet hosted phones, things like that, but a lot of legacy phone systems are based around ISDN technology.
I guess we're seeing, one predominant option, but one that's probably coming a bit further down the line. Hosted voice we're seeing is the primary option that we're seeing people move towards. But I think longer terms now we're starting to see Microsoft with 365 and their E5, and where Teams maybe is going as a bit of a longer term solution.
Yeah, I think there are other options that people can look at. So, some people at a very basic level are saying if the phone system's capable of supporting SIP trunks, they're converting the phone system so the calls, the inbound and outbound calls are actually coming in across the internet through a SIP trunk, and that's replacing the ISDN service. But all they're doing there really is replacing a phone system that's a line into a phone system that's 10 years old with a different line. Yep. They're not really getting any extra features, they're not taking advantage of anything else, they're just delivering the calls in a slightly different way to the same phone system.
I guess that's where obviously we use a hosted phone system. The extra benefits that you see over having just a physical phone system in the office, from having business continuity, where take us an example where we didn't have water, I think, wasn't it?
That was it.
No water in the toilets or something.
Yeah, we had two issues, didn't we, over the last few years. One was where we had a gas leak at the old building,
yep.
When we didn't even have gas in the building. And then the other was the issue where we are now, where we lost water supply. So on both occasions, all we did is we got the guys to pick up their phones and go home and carry on working. Some of them didn't even bring physical handsets, they just used the soft phone features. So yeah, I think it's probably worth explaining what a hosted phone system is.
Yep.
Essentially, when you've got a phone system, a traditional phone system, you'd have a box within your server room. That's where your ISDN lines would terminate. That's where your telephones would connect back to. And all we're doing with a hosted phone system is taking that box and putting it into the cloud. So there's lots of different providers that provide that type of service. But by doing that, we're not just taking away the kind of the physical limitation in that it's got to be at this location, but we're also allowing people to enable other features and take phones wherever they want, as long as they've got an internet connection, and they can still present that same telephone number. You take, for example, our guys in, we've got one guy in Poland and we had two guys in South Africa. They're able to make calls as if they're in the UK. We're able to transfer internal calls. Yeah. That's something that we couldn't do if we were on a very traditional phone system. So
and an office a business that has multiple offices, regional offices, internal calls between those different offices. And
yeah, and I think we're certainly seeing a lot more in terms of hosted telephony. So I think when we look at where people are going with this kind of 2025 switch, right now I think the big focus is around SIP trunks and hosted voice. Where we're going though in the future, that might change. So we're using obviously Microsoft Teams internally. So Teams is essentially, it's a replacement for Skype, but it's also got some additional functionality. It's an Office 365 product. And now with the voice integration in there, it's quite a cool tool. I personally don't think it's mature enough to replace a sort of call centre type phone system in the same sort of phone system that we would have here. The reporting's not there. There are other integrations. But I think when we keep an eye on what's happening with Microsoft, I think it's going to make sense that people probably do look at that in the future.
I think it moves from almost like a same representation that we've seen from an IT perspective, where people had on-premise servers and a physical bit of kit in their office, to moving that now to 365 or cloud-based services. Telephony is kind of going the same way, isn't it? That not as many people have an on-premise box in their office that runs telephony. Because why do you want to moving it to an OPEX spend rather than a big CAPEX investment however many years?
Yeah, I think, if you were starting a business now and it was a small business, you wouldn't buy a phone system. You would buy a hosted phone system, or you'd buy an Office 365 license and enable Teams voice. And with the integration with your mobile phone, with your laptop, and particularly with Teams and the integration to the other Office products, it just makes sense to look at that. But I think the other thing is, handsets, people don't really go for handsets anymore. So again, when you're looking at it being a software solution rather than being a kind of traditional hardware with a fixed handset on a desk, so many people are using soft phone functionality now, or using their mobile to make and receive calls, that actually it just kind of brings itself closer to that IT side rather than traditional telephony.
And I think it helps that kind of agile working, remote working, flexible working type approach, because it's not your phone on your desk, that you're tied to that physical bit of kit.
Yeah, well, you look at, we're working on a large office move for a client at the moment. They're, I suppose, 200 people or so. They're moving towards agile working, and one of the things they're considering is, do they have a phone on the desk? And I think a lot of people will opt not to have phones on desks, which is going to save a lot of money, but it also just means that you don't need to worry about logging into a phone, logging out of a phone. Your mobile office, your office, is literally where you sit your laptop, and you're kind of working the same way you would at any other desk. So I think we'll see a lot more of that. I don't think the offering from Microsoft is quite mature enough for some businesses at the moment.
Yep.
And I think there'll still be a big demand on hosted voice for the next few years. But I think what we might find is, in a few years' time, we start to transition some of those hosted voice clients across to Teams, but also that we transition some of our kind of legacy on-prem phone systems either to hosted voice or to Teams, and using Teams voice for that.
So if you'd like to know more about hosted voice or Office 365 and Teams solutions coming in the future, feel free to get in contact with us, and thank you for watching. Bye-bye.
Thank you.